Good evening.
Hello. Welcome to Ltd Ink. I mean, we can't really start the show without congratulating you on just managing to get here in a red weather warning. That was definitely going to be the topical issue of the intro.
Yeah. 60 blow ends.
Does anyone have any storm-based stories for us thus far? They're all going to come after, once we've had a few drinks and they're tumbling down the street and you're seeing people holding their French bulldogs like kites. So this is Reekie times Ltd Ink number 2. It's the second in a series of events that we're doing in collaboration with Kevin Harmon and the Ltd Ink Galleries, which is about bringing the big show format and rejigging it into an art gallery space. This is that art gallery space. You're in it. In case you were curious about that, that wasn't a big intro to talk about somewhere else. It was to talk about here. There is art on the walls. We have the Kevin Harmon wall, which is on my right and your left, unless you're standing in a funny position, and that's on you. And then we have the Sarah Muirhead wall. I don't know about you, but I think that's maybe worth a wee round of applause. That'll be the last of my antagonistic audience interaction for the night. That was the first and the best joke. That normally gets a bigger laugh. There we go. Thank you.
We were just sitting talking about the Beatles documentary at the back there, and I feel we kind of interrupted it. Didn't you watch it? See, the only people who watch it are people who've got Disney Plus because they've got wee kids. Don't know why it's on Disney Plus. You should watch it. It's the most amazing piece of art. It's called boring in some of the papers today, apparently. Disagree 100%. Get yourself curried in and watch it over the next few nights, and you will see the creative process in a way I've never seen before of a band, probably since, well, maybe Picasso, Mystery of Picasso, Clouseau, 1956. You know the film?
I do not.
It kind of opened up the creative process. Anyway,
I saw the new National Geographic series Genius on Picasso, though. That was fucking great.
Aye?
Yeah.
I never saw that one.
Small aberration in your introduction there. I'll put you back to it.
Okay.
This is we've been running for 11 years. This is the slick end of the intro environment. This is, you've seen us at our most professional level here. This is taking practice. If you were there in the early days, it was ropey. It was very gnarly.
Tight as fuck. So, what should I say after that?
To be fair, after the 18th month break, I've came back with a clipboard, but not just any clipboard. Has my name on it in sparkly gold letters.
Nice.
Thank you very much. We're going to get along well. That degree of appreciation was deep, it was honest, I felt it. It was poetry.
Just come back with the same bottle of beer.
Unlabelled though.
Unlabelled.
So you don't know what you're drinking.
Yeah.
You know it's beer.
It's definitely beer. You've all got unlabelled beer? Yeah, nice. It's an unlabelled place here. We're no labels, as you can see. No labels. No labels whatsoever. Patterned.
This is hand knitted.
Hand knitted, no labels.
So I'm Michael, that's Kevin. We better tell you a little bit about some of the performers you're going to be hearing from tonight, or else you might get a little bit trepidatious that it's just me and him. So Davey, do you want to flick a slide for us?
I'm going to flick a slide. It's really slick because the next slide's the snowblinder slide.
Oh, nice.
Should we talk about that first?
Yeah, why not? Davey, is that?
If you've got that one queued up, just go for it.
There we go, snowblinder.
So you've just arrived in a show, and most slick professionals would wait till the end of the night, till you've perhaps enjoyed it, to sell you the second show. But we think some of you might fuck off early at this space, so come in big with a sales pitch. That's our Christmas show. It's called The Snowballer. I came up with that title. Was happy with it. I'm now starting to regret it. And there's all those people there. Norman Blake from Teenage Fan Club, Catherine Williams, Clarissa Woods, Andreas Oderica, Chris McQueer. It's going to be a pretty nice night in a big church at the bottom of Leith St Andrews, at the bottom of Easter Road, called Leith St Andrews Church. The Williamson family special recipe mulled buckfast will be back.
It will. My daughter made it up all herself. I'm going to inherit it backwards.
We've got someone doing tarot card readings, just in case Christmas was too Christian for you. We're going to paganise it on the night, turn it a bit more Halloween and spooky. And then the rest of it's just a big show in a church. There's a pulpit. You can stand, well, we can stand up in it. That's exciting.
Yeah, and there's going to be loud music and Christmas music, and there's going to be people that you'll recognise, some you may not, and you need to recognise. All of that kind of stuff. And
the minister is a poet. He runs the venue. When Davies Band Finney played with Andrew Weatherall and stuff there. Remember, someone was dancing on one of the pews and turned around to the person beside them and said, "We shouldn't really be doing this in the church. Imagine if the minister caught us." And the guy turns around and said, "I am the minister!" And then invaded the dance floor at the front. So it's that type of church. So that's the Christmas show plug over. That's that part of the night come to a close, and we'll be swiftly cantering onwards.
we should really introduce some of the people who are going to be doing stuff tonight. It's not going to be the banging music Christmas one. This is going to be more about stories. All the best arts is made from stories. It's stories. Sculpture is stories. Everything's stories. So it's going to be stories tonight, and we're going to have people telling us stories, showing us stories, talking through stories. And
let's continue the story.
let's continue the story with the names of the storytellers. Starting with Katie Go. Right, that's it. They've come all the way for Inkling, the 404 Ink Prize. Give them a big applause. Arisa Qureshi. Kaskia Ritchie.
Sarah Muirhead. And the night will be ending with Dot Allison. So I'll leave you to introduce the first film, Kevin, and then the 404 Ink third. Normally the shows are in halves. We've fucked with the formula even more so tonight, and it's going to be arriving in thirds, which gives you more time to use the lavatories, use the bars, and buy sexy merchandise. Well, you know, make friends in the distances and absences of the night. Yeah.
Good.
Let me leave you on that note.
Yeah.
See you again
do
soon.
that. All right.
I'll be back
Grab a
here.
seat. We're just going to start off. If you've come into Reekie over the last 11 years, I've tried, and Michael's tried, and we've tried to introduce you to different filmmakers, but especially animators. Some obscure animators from all over the world, animators you might not have heard of because it's been part of Reekie since day one. So we're just going to have a short one. It's about 6 minutes long. It's by an animator who I kind of really love, Steve Cutts. Anybody know his work? Steve Cutts? You probably do if you watch The Simpsons. He's done a couple of Simpsons couch gags. He's a really left-wing, anti-capitalist, radical guy who does really high-profile stuff as well. I like the way he balances it all out. And his views on YouTube are in about the 50 millions. It's ridiculous, like the amount of popularity this guy's got. But it's off it's animation, and if you're not into animation, you won't know it. So we're going to do this animation. It's by Steve Cutts, and it's kind of a wee fuck Black Friday opening. Because it is Black Friday, and if you haven't been spending all your money on Amazon, you've done well. So here's a little bit of left-wing stuff from Steve Cutts, and then we'll move on to the readings and stuff. Okay. QVT. Just getting you in for Christmas shopping there. Black Friday. Okay, see Black Friday, right? There's one tradition. I don't know if you know this tradition in Scotland. It's a publisher's tradition. And I've noticed that every year, 404 Ink, who are one of our favourite publishers, they do some of the most amazing books, as you're about to see. They challenge all sorts of boundaries, and the people behind there are just such amazing people. They really do go the extra mile. Every year they have a Black Friday sale where they make a big thing of taking nothing off anything. And trying to get people to buy stuff at the original prices and making no apology whatsoever for it, which is a brilliant thing. And we've got 3 of their authors. 404 Ink have been producing this series of essay books, those short books. This is the size of them. They're absolutely beautiful little editions. I really love them, just the feel of them, everything about them. They're lovely laid out and beautifully written as well. They're essay books on all kinds of subjects. It's really eclectic. And we've got 3 of the authors. I think there's been 8 out so far, and there's a few more to come. And they're going to keep this going. So we've got 3 of the authors from these. They're called Inklings, which is quite relevant. Ltd Ink, you know, the crossover. You see the ink thing? Yes, yeah, okay. And we've got 3 of the authors who will give you an idea of the diversity of these books. The first one up will be Katie Go, who's written a book here on surviving the world through imagined catastrophes. No, disasters. Glasses. Imagine disasters. Catastrophes. It's probably pushing it a bit farther. Disasters. And as a volcano fan, I learned something really important from this book at the very beginning, and that's that Mount Vesuvius erupted 10 years before the book of Revelations was written. Now, does that mean anything to anybody? Well, it does to me. Only a few. So anyway, it seemed kind of relevant. You learn all these facts from these books. So anyway, Katie Go's going to talk about the apocalyptic side of her essay, and after that we're going to have Arisa Qureshi, who's written this book called Flip the Script, How Women Came to Rule Hip Hop, which is another amazing book. It goes right back through the British women in hip hop. It's a fantastic history. It's a history that's not really been told before, and I think I'm biased but pleased by all of these books, all of them, and we will have a bit of time. You know, Black Friday. This is a Black Friday sale, and then we're going to move on to another subject where Cassie Ritchie is going to deconstruct the clothes of the artist Prince and the stories that they tell. So as each of them come up, Katie's going to be first, then Arisa, then Cassie. Give them a big round of applause, and after they've finished, make sure you go through, get signed copies, okay? All good? Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for that introduction. That was really nice. It is disasters, not catastrophes, but they're basically the same. Yeah, I feel like I maybe should tell you a little bit about this book. We got commissioned to write these this time last year, actually, so it was a very short space of time we had to write them. And mine sort of was born out of, I think that 404 Ink wanted a book that was about COVID-19, but wasn't really about COVID-19. So there are references to it, and I sort of use the pandemic as a jumping off point to talk about sort of social, economic, political disasters and how fiction can be a really sort of exciting way to sort of think about alternative ways of living, alternative ways of, you know, engaging with each other and sort of surviving the end of the world almost. So that's sort of what I do. So I'm going to read a little bit from the introduction. Yeah. The first time the world ended, I was 6 years old. People were partying like it was 1999 as news anchors and doomsayers prophesied whether or not a computer glitch would cause an apocalypse to herald in the new millennium. The problem was that computer programs might not be able to read dates further than 1999. It was hypothesized that calendar time could roll backwards like a taximeter to 1900, resulting in crashed planes, banking systems, and electrical grids. A Y2K software outage had been deliberated as early as the 1950s, but largely ignored until 1999 arrived. Then mass hysteria broke out. Countries established Y2K task forces, and fundamentalist religious leaders decreed that a millennium apocalypse was God's instrument to shake this nation, to humble this nation. Some panicked, some found God, but most resigned themselves to destiny and kept partying. What are we doing on New Year's Eve? Well, I'm going to be hiding somewhere. Backstreet Boys member Nick Carter quipped nervously on MTV. It turns out the world didn't end on the first day of the year 2000. Computers ticked over into the new calendar year, elevators kept descending, and a pin was put in the apocalypse. I was too young to remember much of Y2K. My childhood New Year's Eve all blurred together in my memories, a rush of my parents' friends' faces, fireworks and Christmas lights. But I can remember with clarity the next time the world ended. 12 years after Y2K, another apocalypse was foretold, but rather than technology, this Armageddon was ancient history. A New Age interpretation of a Mayan calendar that ended on 21st of December 2012 marked the day the Earth would undergo a transformation which, depending on your doomsayer, could be a rapture, earth-colliding with a mythical planet, or freak weather. A minor conspiracy theory was whipped into a frenzy of apocalyptic prophesizing by the internet, religious leaders, and Hollywood. 2012, the disaster movie starring John Cusack was released in 2009. 1 in 7 people were polled as believing the world would end on the 21st of December 2012, and I was, depending on the day, maybe one of them. A teenager with an overactive imagination, I scoffed at the idea in conversation and spent my nights reading blogs on the elaborate mathematics of Mayan calendars. On the date itself, I took some relief that mass catastrophe hadn't been reported by New Zealanders, who surely would have dipped into the apocalypse for the rest of the world. But I still waited up until midnight GMT, incessantly lighting up my BBG watch before concluding that the end was, in fact, not nigh. The next day, NASA published an article titled, "Why the World Didn't End," explaining with the patience of a high school science teacher that the apocalypse can't just be speculated into existence by anxiety-ridden bloggers. Bit cowardly, I thought, while reading it, waiting until the apocalypse doesn't happen to publish this. In the long stream of history, Y2K and 2012 are hardly special occurrences. Look back 10 years, or 100, or 1,000, and you'll find the apocalypse. End of the world has been happening and subsequently not happening, since people could make shit up. Take the Bible, the original Reddit thread, which is riddled with Armageddon. Plagues, floods, serpents of fire, and raging brimstone, all features divine retribution in the New and Old Testaments. But it's in the book of Revelation, the Bible's concluding book, where things take an especially apocalyptic turn. Revelation's author John outlines both a literal and an allegorical vision of a future rapture, when God will make the world anew after serpents of evil persecute the faithful. 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, prophesies John, will bring disaster. Plagues, famines, and wars that will kill off a third of the world's population. When all hope seems lost, God's forces will return to destroy the evil and deliver a brave new world. The book of Revelation was written during a time of war and natural disaster. Its author John is thought to have been a Jewish refugee who fled Jerusalem after an army of Romans decimated the city. Written 60 years after Jesus' death and a decade after the eruption of Mount Vesuvius, John lived in apocalyptic times. Revelation is a piece of political writing, a nightmarish howl for hope in hopeless time. The biblical book's narrative arc, disaster followed by redemption, has cemented itself as the prototypical narrative of disaster fiction, and Revelation's legacy lives on as the most influential apocalyptic tale in Christian, and by extension, Western culture. 2,000 years after it was written, John's archetype reveals more fictitious visions of the end of the world. It's there in the technological anxieties of Victorian Britain's science fiction novelists, in the environmental disaster movies of the 2000s, and in our 2012 misinterpretation of a Mayan calendar that followed the then worst recession since the 1970s. During times of social upheaval, apocalyptic tales and dystopian visions become manifestations of contemporary anxieties, from H.G. Wells' alien invasion tale of colonial guilt, War of the Worlds, to Armageddon's pre-9/11 display of American bravado, to Susan Collins' widely popular The Hunger Games trilogy, published as masses of protesters to the streets, demonstrating for civil rights, fair economic structures, and free speech across the world. The word apocalypse has roots in ancient Greek, with apo, off, and kalyptin, cover, combining to form apocalypse, meaning to uncover or reveal. The destructive connotations of apocalypse are more modern. In Middle English, the word refers instead to a vision or hallucination. These two historical definitions, a vision that reveals, is why I believe we collectively are drawn to the apocalypse in fiction and in the world around us. The end of the world is a wonderfully liberating narrative device, one that unites all the species. It's why storytellers, from Revelation's John to Armageddon's director Michael Bay, return to the end of the world time and time again. Whether it's a God's wrath, an asteroid coming to wipe out Earth, or simply our own individual deaths, the apocalypse is a universe of fear and fascination that transcends barriers of place, identity, and time. As destructive as the apocalypse is portrayed in movies, books, and games, its original meaning implies an unveiling of the truth. It melts away the sheen of civilization to expose our basest human nature and ask, what are we at our core? Disaster lays us, our identities, behaviours and priorities bare. Boundaries are violated as an uncertain void in our future opens up. After the end of the world, everything is possible. We can be anything, we can be nothing. Thank you.
Next up, the author of Flip the Script, How Women Came to World Hip Hop, Arisa Qureshi.
Hi, can everyone hear me okay? Hi, so I'm Arisa, and thank you so much to Reekie for having us as part of this lineup. I've been going to Reekie events for a long time, and it's really cool to actually finally be part of one. So I'm here to tell you about my book, Flip the Script, and this book is about women in hip-hop, but specifically women in UK hip-hop. And in a nutshell, the reason I chose to focus on the UK is because I really believe with all my heart that there's some great stuff happening in UK in all the regions, and I think that a big part of that is the women that are innovating in all the regions in the UK. So this book is not necessarily a history of or a deep analysis. It's my love letter to the genre, telling the stories of some of the really important women in their own words, through interviews. And it's basically me celebrating where we are in hip-hop right now, but also the women that came first, the pioneers, and where we still have to go, and everything that's still, to come in hip-hop. So with that in mind, I'm going to read a bit of the first chapter. And the first chapter is called The Woman Who Built the Scene. When considering the history of women in hip-hop, there are some names that will always stand out. There's Debbie D, a member of DJ Marley Marl's Juice Crew, Pebbly Poo, who joined DJ Kool Herc's Herculoids, and Lisa Lee, who was in Africa Bambaata's Universal Zulu Nation. Then, of course, there's Sha Rock, considered the first prominent female MC, and Mercedes Ladies, the first all-female group in hip-hop. These names are a fundamental piece of the wider hip-hop puzzle, while simultaneously being relegated to the footnotes of history. Without these women, the genre would be nowhere near as rich, bold, and full of fire as it is today. These women were the pioneers. There's a notorious story in the culture's canon, that of Roxanne Shante. Native to Queens, New York, she began rapping as a child, quickly becoming a central figure in the scene at just 14, thanks to her battle rap track, Roxanne's Revenge. Written in response to UTFO's Roxanne, Roxanne, it was a song about a fictional woman that kept brushing off male groups' advances. In her daring and confrontational response, Shanti embodied this fictional character, creating an instant hit and inspiring a whole generation of diss tracks in the process. She wasn't a one-hit wonder or a mere marketing pawn. She had undeniable skills as an MC and battle rapper. As a young woman, she was considered a threat to many men in the scene. It was at the annual MC Battle for World Supremacy in 1985 where this came to a head. The competition, known for creating legends and spotlighting the best MCs in the game, was the setting for an event that dimmed Shanti's light. The only woman competing, she made the final against Fizzy B. Starsky. Despite being the better rapper and clear favourite, she was defeated in what can only be described as fix, ending with her in tears. Listening back to the audio from the battle, which exists on YouTube, Shanti dominates. The cheers alone as she rolls out diss after diss confirm this. Starsky does well, but pales in comparison, as Shanti gradually gets increasingly riled up, energy never faltering. She delivers the kind of verbal takedown that makes you proud of her all these years later. In her excellent illustrated anthology, The Motherlode, writer Clover Hope details the battle, and Judge Curtis Blow purposely giving Shanti a low score because he didn't like the optics of a girl winning a rap battle, no matter how much she outperformed her opponent. It's fairly well established, even by Blow himself, that Shanti did in fact win. In Kathy Ayandoli's God Save the Queens, she notes how many viewed Blow's actions that day as his attempt to prevent women from leading the next phase of hip-hop. Ayandoli quotes Busy Bee, who told her, "I think they weren't ready for a female to take the helm," later herself asking, "So what would have happened if that new guard had been led by women?" The events of that battle always stuck with me as a significant moment in early hip-hop that marked its future. Not only because Shanti came closer to dethroning her male counterparts than anyone else before her, but also because it was widely acknowledged Shanti should have won. She was the best rapper there, but in the words of Clover Hope, Everyone told her she was nice for a girl. In all facets of the music industry, women have been told similar. They're good for a girl. They make decent music for a girl. It is perhaps one of the core reasons women are left out of the history of genres they revolutionise. That same year in the UK, another competition was taking place. 2 young women from Clapham, South London, were about to storm a national rap championship at the Wire Club, which would launch their entire career. They would quickly go on to capture the attention of the UK pop scene, as well as key industry figures like John Peel. But 2 years earlier, in 1983, MC Remedy, Debbie Price, and Susie Q, Susan Banfield, were just getting started as Cookie Crew, inspired by what was happening in the New York music scene. Cookie Crew predated other prominent women in UK pop, like She Rockers and Wee Papa Girl rappers, not to mention Moni Love, who would go on to settle in New York in 1988 to massive success. As one of the first female hip-hop groups in the UK, they were also among the first to battle the hurdles women faced in the genre, constantly compared to adjacent male rappers, forced to prove themselves despite their evident success, and constantly pushed in different and often contradictory directions. We started listening to hip-hop because Debbie would go to New York with her family in the early 80s, record the radio on a cassette tape and bring it back for us to listen to, so Susie explains. We would listen to it at home, and it was amazing to us. We started to hear different styles of rap on these cassette tapes that were basically New York radio, and we said to each other, we could do that, so let's try something. The pair would spend time in the park near where they grew up with their crew of friends, roller skating and playing double dutch. Once they started writing, this was the ideal place to test the waters with their rhymes. Around the same time, the BBC broadcast a documentary called Beat This, a hip-hop history, which caught the attention of the young rappers-to-be. In the documentary, Malcolm McLaren, best known for his contributions to punk rock by managing the Sex Pistols, talks about his introduction to Africa Bambaata's Zulu Nation in the South Bronx. Malcolm McLaren did this documentary in a place in Covent Garden where breakers used to hang out, Susie recalls. We started to connect the dots with everything that was happening in the hip-hop scene. There were graffiti artists down there were breakers, and there were rappers. Everyone started to try a little something. This included Susie and Debbie, who were writing raps, not realising that there weren't really other girls doing the same thing locally. We had no clue because we saw American girls doing it. We were listening to female rappers like Sha Rock, Lisa Lee and Debbie D, and we were influenced by them. There were a lot of rappers out there at the time, all male, but we did see Michelle David, also known as Mystery MC at Family Quest. We saw her rapping on stage. She was freestyling, she blew us away. She was the first female rapper. Before that, we'd never seen anyone from England. I didn't see any others before her. Before long, they were accepted into the fold as rappers in their own right, respected for their rhymes. It was at this point in 1985 that they heard about a rap competition being run by a young Tim Westwood with prize money and a recording contract up for grabs. I'm going to stop there to find out what happens.
Thanks, Susa. And the third of our inklings tonight is the author of On His Royal Badness, The Life and Legacy of Princess Fashion. Put your hands together for Casca Ritchie.
My name's Cassie, don't worry, it's a weird spelling, it's fine. So yeah, a little bit about my book. I didn't really have much choice about being a Prince fan growing up. My mum and dad were obsessed. And all throughout my life, Prince has been there. And as a kind of fashion historian and fashion researcher, Prince has been greatly missed out within fashion studies. And this book is just the beginning of research that I've been doing for the past 4 or 5 years, trying to right that wrong and tell people about the amazing disruption of masculinities and performative sex and sensuality and all those good things on stage that Prince did throughout his 57 years on this planet. So I'm going to read a little bit from the introduction. Prince means a million different things to millions of different people. In his 57 years on this earth, Prince achieved stratospheric success as a recording artist, selling over 150 million records worldwide and leaving behind a prolific legacy as a trailblazer of popular music. Prince's artistry remains limitless, and through performance, lyrics and fashion, he challenged conventional notions of hegemonic masculinities within popular culture. Firmly in control of his image, both on and off stage, the musician's distinct wardrobe rewrote contemporary perceptions of how a black male musician should look, sound and behave. Each look was a visual embodiment of his artistry, from ornate ear cuff down to bespoke heel. The clothing was just as integral as his music. In learning about Prince's sartorial legacy, we can learn more about Prince, both as an artist and individual, and more so how his fashion interacted with and rebelled against the world around. Prince was devoted to the art of dressing. Fearless in style experimentation, he did it all. Belly tops, 4-inch heels, turtlenecks, unitards, pussy blows, silk pajamas, DIY trench coats, caftans, cowl neck jumpsuits, sports jerseys, corsets, zoot suits, hip chains. The man was versatile. Tactility was key within his clothing, playing with a diverse range of unconventional menswear fabrics such as PVC, lace, mesh, brocades, spandex, fringe, and lame. He championed the use of technologically advanced second skin fabrics such as model and digitally printed silk jerseys. Importantly, Prince's clothing had to move with the artist, whether that was 10 feet up in the air mid-split or at 3 AM after the after-show party. Societal limitations of 20th century menswear did not register on Prince's style radar. Throughout his life, he was known to borrow clothing from his lovers and openly buy off-rack women's wear. It simply did not matter to him. He effortlessly made the garments look good regardless. He immersed himself in fashion magazines from all over the world, creating his own tear-off scrapbooks of personal favourites to send to his costume designers. As an artist, he understood the importance of personal style, especially as a mode of universal communication and commodity to his fans. Later in life, Prince dropped hidden album announcements by literally wearing them. Prince created his own unique lexicon of fashion, remaining true to himself regardless of trend or industry influence. I feel really strongly that Prince's transgressive acts of dress warrant further exploration, discussion and acknowledgement within fashion studies and beyond. Whilst critical attention has rightfully been placed on his music, background and identity, there remains comparatively little focus studying on Prince's style. And I hope that my book is going to be part of this open conversation. This is by no means a comprehensive study of Prince's extensive wardrobe, more like a greatest hits compilation. Let's call this the Hits Disc 1 for the time being. So why am I spending all my free time researching what was inside Prince's wardrobe? Quite simply put, I love Prince. He has remained a constant companion throughout my life. Some of my earliest memories, oddly enough, feature Prince, thanks to my parents' eclectic music taste of Cypress Hill, Skunk Anansie, George Michael, Cocteau Twins, John Lee Hooker, and Prince. I can remember squishing my face up to the television, the screen static bubbling away on my grubby little hands as I watched Prince's scandalous MTV Video Music Awards performance of Get Off. Yes, the one where his bum's out. Of course, Prince's music is key to my adulation of the artist, but I am equally amoured, nay obsessed with Prince's radical self-expression through personal style. Prince's overt displays of unapologetic glamour similarly resonated with me alongside my teenage discovery of old Hollywood femme fatales. People did not look like Lauren Bacall or Prince in the real world, but perhaps it was possible. I remember the first time I watched Purple Rain, I think it was around the age of 14. Watching Prince arrive on stage dripping in sweat and rhinestones, I wondered why my parents did not let me in on that little particular secret. People really could look like that. Discovering that people in fact could dress like that I could dress like that, was hugely influential to me and cemented my obsession with vintage fashion and only strengthened my love of Prince. Charity shops became dream destinations after school, where I would hunt high and low for any remnants of sex shooter style outfits. I ended up with a pile of scratchy nylon 1980s teddies from Marks and Spencer, which I actually still can't throw out. Amassing a collection of costume jewellery, lace, and 1980s polyester finery. As I progressed through high school and onto university, I chose to study fashion design, sticking up printouts of the purple one in my studio space. I made lifelong friends on my second night of staying in the halls of residence thanks to my trusty Prince DVD collection. What an excellent icebreaker. I went on to study fashion at an MA level in MLit, with Prince's influence never far away. Shortly before Prince passed in 2016, I began to dig deeper into Prince's fashion, realising that very little context and oral history had been collected. I began to interview Prince affiliates, scour auction sites for historical clothing sales, and watch hours and hours and hours of Prince footage. It's a hard life. Trying to piece together the life of Prince through clothes. I have presented my purple research at various academic conferences across the UK, Europe and America, and my research has also been published in books and blah blah blah, that's boring stuff. I made my own purple pilgrimage to the Twin Cities in 2018. To this day I still cannot believe that I got the chance to visit Minneapolis, Prince's home city. Everywhere I turned there were signs of the hometown hero. Cashiers in immaculate metallic, purple manicures embellished with tiny love symbols, the Minneapolis sound pouring out from local bars and restaurants 24/7, strolls through Uptown, an Uber driver who used to hang out with the musician Morris Day. His presence was felt everywhere. As fans flocked to Paisley Park, Prince's iconic studio complex and home, I saw fathers and daughters adorned in lace, best friends dressed in matching love-sexy ensembles, lone travellers meeting new friends, proudly wearing customised denim jackets, meticulously painted with purple iconography. Even in death, Prince's impact could be seen and felt. Through fashion, he created a visceral visual conversation that all fans could understand. Witnessing this display of reverence and adoration through clothing and self-expression was incredibly moving for me. This is where I truly realised the lasting impact that Prince's fashion has made within the lives of millions of people. In an attempt to marry up my past life as a fashion student and everyone's desire to dress the purple one, I have included some hand-drawn purple paper dolls and coordinating outfits to tap into your creative juices along the way. Which is here if anybody wants to. He's naked in all of them with some pants. This, along with my research into Prince's sartorial universe, is my small way of giving thanks to his royal badness. For all the sweaty nights on the dance floor, sing-alongs and bubble baths, veiled dress-ups, and constant self-discovery through his art. Thank you.
Thank you very much, the 404 Ink Inklings. So we do have a small coterie, maybe a very small coterie of physical books to sell, but not many, I don't think. In fact, none at all. But what they do have in the new digital wave of publishing is these QR codes on trendy cards. And if you want any of those books, you take a picture of that QR code and it takes you straight into the mainframe. So they'll be with you in time for Christmas on this Black Friday 0% off tonight. But extra kudos. So we're going to have precisely a 7-minute and 32-second break now. So fill your glasses, empty your bladder, make new friends and play nice and come back to us in 7 minutes and 29 seconds now. Nice, like that. Enthusiasm, rapturous. So this is the middle third. It's the middle third. It's the first time we've had a middle third. It's just two halves. I'm more amused by it than the rest of you, but we'll get there. It only goes up from here on in. So I've got the great privilege in this middle third of the Reekie show to be chatting to the artist Sarah Muirhead. Now I'll tell you some things about Sarah while she stands awkwardly as I sort of throw plaudits at her. Sarah was born in Glasgow. She graduated from ECA in 2009, was nominated as one of the 10 new sensations by a panel that included Kirsty Wark and Tracy Emin for a show which would follow with solo exhibitions in Newcastle, Edinburgh and London. Sarah's subjects include performers, singers, dancers, artists, models, homeless people and friends. She's exhibited in the UK, worked in medical illustration and portraiture, as well as her main practice in innovative figurative art. She's known to use body paint and projectors on some of her subjects, giving them something to interact with. Her work articulates the anatomy of the body whilst creating layered imagery and provoking questions about identity and gender. On a more personal note, I feel like me and Sarah were sort of coming up in the Edinburgh art scene at the same time. A lot of the friends that we got to know who were establishing themselves as artists, a lot of the people we were collaborating with intermixed with each other. And we started to be inspired by the same people and brought together in the same circles, and through that became very dear and very close friends. Along with the likes of Rachel McLean, Jim Lambie, Kevin Harmon, Scott Hutchison and Liz Lockhead, Sarah participated in Reekie's Big Issue project a few years back, where we got 12 different artists, Turner Prize winners, the cult heroes, to paint individual artworks that we hid in 12 big issues over the Christmas season. So you got your chance to own a very pricey and sexy piece of art for a very small amount of time, for a very small price and gesture. On top of that, a few years back I got invited over to South Africa to curate the Young British Artist Showcase during the Cape Town Art Fair. And I got to invite a few different artists. I invited the poet Holly McNish. I invited, not just friends obviously, I invited the musician Eyes of Others, John Bryden, and Case Bancoli from Young Fathers, and we flew over to South Africa. Had a bit of a Scottish slant on my Young British Artist Showcase there, you might have seen. But for me, Scotland was where it was at. And one of the tit for tats, the head curator of the Cape Town Gallery cartel of artists over there wanted me to do was to interview one of Scotland's foremost young artists to show on the projector to a packed theatre of people during the Cape Town Art Fair. So I interviewed Sarah and we showed some films and some images of her art and a bit of a conversation there, and the audience were completely rapturous about it. And although I got a few compliments on my poetry, I got more inquiries where Sarah Muirhead was. So yeah, she's it's someone. It's an artist I feel very personally about, and as a wee sort of aberrential side note from that, my last book was illustrated by a singer called Scott Hutchison, and he drew all of these different oysters within the book, and we made this pact to get these oyster tattoos on each other, and Scott sadly passed, and I was left with this pact. In fact, it was one of the last things he said to me, so I thought, fuck, I'm going to have to go through with that. I thought I'd sort of sneaked out of getting these. I didn't have any tattoos at the time, but then I was pretty obligated to do it, but I thought I'm really going to have to find the right artist to tattoo interpret Scott's artwork, and Sarah did that for me, and so I have some of Scott/Sarah's art also tattooed on my body at the same time. So as many plaudits are in Sarah's biography and past history as an artist, they're only a smidge of the reasons that I have a huge love and a huge respect for Sarah as a person and as a leading artist, if you're comfortable with that.
Not at all, but I'll take it.
That was a big fucking intro. She deserves it, and more. So, we have the Kev Harmon wall on this side, and we are very lucky to have the Sarah Muirhead wall on that side. We have 3 small canvases and 1 big beautiful canvas, and I think it would be a really interesting way to start for you to talk to us a little bit about what we have on the walls this evening.
So the 3 smaller canvases are a kind of mishmash of, thank you, a kind of mishmash of, I've spent quite a long time collecting images of objects that I find interesting in museums that I haven't quite known what to do with, and they're just kind of usually things that are kind of hidden away in corners that I think people usually kind of walk past, but to me have a bit of character and something kind of quirky and odd and usually a little bit funny about them. And I kind of wanted to make them the centre of something, and I like the idea of them being part of a still life that means that they are kitsch, but they still have value, that I get to focus on their kind of imperfect but very beautiful kind of lustrous texture, even though they're surrounded by much more beautiful things. I like the fact they're a bit broken. And I've paired them with images that I've found on the internet that make you feel slightly uncomfortable and maybe allude to something about those objects. I like the idea of taking something that is in itself like kind of innocent and you might find in your granny's cupboard, and pairing it with an image that makes you feel slightly uncomfortable. So like the leering man in the third painting, or the provocative image in the first painting. And I like the fact that it's kind of asking you to make a value-based judgment that is actually about your own views on that kind of imagery. But yeah, so that's a start. That's those three.
That's the triptych. So are they a triptych on their own, or are they part of a much wider series?
They're part of a much wider series. That I think I've got about 9 or 10 of them now, but I'm kind of trying to work up to about 30. That collectively, I just want to kind of invoke a bit of a sense of unease, and maybe to invite you to sort of question why you feel this way about particular things. So, I like that they're valuable objects that you wouldn't necessarily want yourself, but that the image in the background kind of maybe makes you think something is sinister about their value.
Does anybody know who the figures in the middle painting of the triptych are?
Anna Nichols Beth. Yeah, the famous, the famous photo. I love that image. I just think it's kind of absurd, and I like that it's kind of it's one of those images everyone knows about, and it's quite provocative, and there's this brilliant power play of who's in control, and we all know what happened, and the sort of blank, sad mask that I found in the British Museum. In amongst a lot of much more kind of very beautiful sort of, I get like more flattering, gorgeous, like specific death masks. That jade mask was kind of in the middle, and there's something about it that I like, that it looks like a lid for someone's face, like a complete block, rather than something that kind of accentuates or something that you would necessarily. So I kind of wanted to allude to both of them. I guess having to wear some sort of facade in order to get what they want. And then the kind of, I think he's a sacrificial bull from the Scottish Museum I found a long time ago. I'm not entirely sure. I quite like them to be contextless. Again, for me, that he is alluding to the fact that both of them are sort of giving up a lot in order to get to where they want to. But I quite like that both things I think are quite leading, and that that's how I see it, and actually maybe you would kind of pair the images in a slightly different way.
Sorry, what's this first one about?
The first one was an image of someone that I've actually wanted to paint for a long time, but she's in the States and we've never actually managed to meet up, so she said that it was all right if I used one of her images. Partly because she makes her money by selling those images, so it's one of those things I didn't want to just lift it. I feel quite strongly about that. Like, that's why most of the stuff that I work from are my own images, but if they're found, like, I kind of want to make sure that that's okay to kind of draw from. I like the mask because I just think there's something like hugely threatening about it, and I like that I was able to kind of preserve her anonymity. And the ornament on the bottom I found in the Scottish Museum, I think it's a sort of French imitation of Chinese like style of sculpture. And to me it just looked super trashy and quite weird. I like the fact that the sort of serpenty dragon on the bottom is kind of submissive, and that the otter-like character on the top is kind of hissing. And I think there's something really interesting about posting a provocative picture that sort of invites you to look, but also says you pay. And that was kind of oddly something that I related to that sculpture.
That's the thing about a lot of your work. There's always been these brilliant juxtapositions within them. It's the whole sort of vicissitudes of the human canvas. It's the opera of the skin. You've always been so great at painting the contorted, the muscular, the scarred in certain situations. It's the skin, often as we don't normally see it, or often as it's not portrayed as the beautified version of the skin. It's the opposite of that, which is just as alluring and just as intriguing, but is not the skin that the fashion industry would teach us to believe is the type of skin that should be worshipped and should be adored.
Yeah, or even that the art industry teaches it. I mean, there's so many little visual codes that I'm really interested in, that like we all get so used to seeing particular characters and particular poses, and I think I like with found imagery, I quite like things to be I feel like I can do kind of more obvious things and then contrast them with objects that say something provocative about them. But when it comes to posing real people, I think there is. You're right. There's something. There are really set standards of male protagonists always being upright and sort of at the forefront and straight on and having kind of gravitas and height and being at the top of a triangle, and female characters only being sort of acceptable in painting when they're submissive. Like I've been in shows before where things have been banned for, this is terrible, I've forgotten the artist's name, but there was a show, it went very well for her because it was a painting that she didn't particularly like, but she was banned from the Mall Gallery in London for being sexually explicit, and the painting was just women standing upright with dungarees that were kind of folded forward and you could see pubic hair. But she was stood forward, and it was right next to a painting of a fully nude woman who was lying back. But because we just, I mean, that's such a familiar image, no one saw it as provocative or confronting or difficult. And I'm not even sort of inviting anyone to make a judgment about that. I just think it's interesting to notice when you are jarred by something just because it's not part of our normal, like, visual language.
Yeah. So, you did one of the most interesting projects I'd seen in lockdown. Obviously, lockdown happened and all these artists had to recontextualise what they were doing, whether it was exhibiting work in galleries, whether it was live show environments. Writers and painters, again, spend a long time learning how to be alone. You took a pack of playing cards, and we're going to see a video of that first. And I'm going to introduce it with a short poem, which wasn't necessarily written for it, but it's been recontextualised for those purposes. I'll fuck up. Mistake born of wonder and giddy, shorn to spark-spitting wires, blood bucket bomb above the soloist, brought down on hunched bones by song's echo, turbid as the occult world of dark drinks, regrets, wretched chutney, the bloodied crawl from its wreckage, the want for quiet wisdom, stubborn as cold turf is, slipped, de-stoned soil can return to its softness. Careful, pain is not transient when risking too much. Careful does not mean no. Courage is careful. Love, moonquake, ripples on lock, impressions on skin, hook hole, fang pit, admissions of simmerdim. I'm aching, careful to tell you, kiss, kiss this. So there was two tiers to that project, right, Sarah? There was all the individual paintings you did, and they all went to different homes. You announced them online. I managed to snag 3 of them quite quickly. And then the second tier was that as you made full sets of cards with them printed onto the back of them. I believe this is the last set.
I think I've got 2.
There are 2 sets of fully formed cards with all of the paintings on the back of them. So this one might be available for sale perhaps, or perhaps they're collector's items. But was that something you were looking to do for quite a while, or did lockdown happen and you thought, fuck, I need to change how I'm going to do things, this is the one for me?
That's exactly what happened. I think the same as everyone else, I panicked and thought, what the hell am I going to do for work? And I also just, I had no idea how long this was going to last. I naively thought I should probably plan a 3-week project. And thought that doing a series of small paintings would probably be a good way of filling time and maintaining some sort of discipline. And I thought doing one a day would be reasonable, and then as time went on I realised I could fill a whole deck, and then it just kept going. But I like the idea of making some affordable art and doing something also that engaged with people in a kind of direct way, because we were all of a sudden cut off. So I kind of made an appeal and said that I wanted to do a project that was based on taboo and fantasy, and if you want to share anonymously what that is and commission a very small original painting, then I just kind of invited people to get in touch, and even if they had a significant number or a significant card, then they could request that. But I'd thought about beer mats or train tickets or bus tickets, and cards came up because I thought we're in isolation, and I was kind of thinking about environments where that happens, and I thought about jails and submarines and I don't know, army camps, places where people are cut off. And one of the things that kept recurring was this idea of playing cards and playing solitaire, and I just quite like that there's the kind of this sort of very long-standing tradition of filthy playing card sets, and I thought that I would quite like to join in with that because it seemed fun.
Well, they're the most beautiful filthy playing cards I've ever seen, and I'm glad to have some of them, and I'm glad you did the project. And we've sort of, I guess, talked about some of your work in the present, some of it in the past, and I'm going to leave you to do your sort of closing remark section of this middle third now. And that is works about the future. I've, I guess, learned more about bodies and skin and gazing at bodies and skin through looking at your deft and dexterous art over the years and all the forms that it's developed, and it's been a real pleasure to see that. I've always been really excited to see where you're going to go. And I've never seen you paint yourself, and I remember asking you about that years ago when we did the Cape Town interview, and there was too many other interesting canvases to look at that point, and I guess there was an intimidation by the self-portrait thing, but I'm going to leave you to make some closing remarks on the concept of future work and self-portraits.
It's kind of a terrifying thing actually, because even speaking about work in the future feels like a vulnerable thing to do, because I'm not entirely sure how that's going to manifest. But I think at the moment, probably like a lot of us, I've had an odd period of sort of limbo and dissociation, and I think every decade holds its particular brand of existential crisis, and I'm in my 30s and this is the worst so far. So I feel like maybe documenting that in some way is valuable. I've also reflected quite a lot because I've experienced serious illness in the past, and I think there's a real weird dissociation with your physical self and your mental self, and I don't want to lose that sense of self, and I feel like making some sort of record of events feels important, but it's excruciating because the idea of doing something like that feels so egotistical, particularly as someone who's kind of built their brand on being a voyeur and who likes to look at other people. It's an uncomfortable thing, but I think the dissociation makes that easier, and so the next plan is to perhaps make a series of self-portraits based on mythical characters. I'm kind of thinking of like people whose self-portraits I like are really obvious, people like Caravaggio or Frida Kahlo, who are able to sort of plunge the depths of their psyche by sort of looking at archetypes based in very ancient stories. I think I'm going to be a harpy. That's my plan. And I think that feeds quite nicely into some of the tattooing that I've been doing as well. And yeah, as a sort of feminist archetype, I think that's a pretty good one. But yeah, so that's my next project. But before I finish warbling, I just wanted to thank you so much, because all the nice things that Michael has said about me, I feel in spades about him, and I'm a huge fan of Reekie and of Michael's work, and I'm just so grateful to be involved in one of these. So thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I'm going to pass the baton over to Mr. Kevin Wellington.
Thank you so much, Sarah. That was fantastic. And Michael, I really enjoyed that. On the theme of stories, I'm going to read a wee story. I don't often get to read at Reekie because it's hard to go on the bill here, you know? So I'm just going to take this opportunity because it's a night of stories, and I don't write very many books either. I'm not very prolific on the books, but I have one brewing up at the moment. And I'm going to read the introduction. It's something that I'm going to try and finish over the winter. It's a story that I think needs told. It's a memoir of the 1990s. It's a love letter to the 1990s from an Edinburgh Scottish perspective. Cultural, it's woven around the publishing imprint. I had Rebel Ink and a lot of the people I met, but also the music, the art, the culture, and why things were a bit different in Scotland from the normal stories. I don't think this story's been told yet, so I'll just fire in and read a little bit from the prelude, and this will be the only time I read from this until it's finished and in print. So it just gets it out of my system, puts it into the public domain. So bear with me for 6 or 7 minutes. The 1990s is an amazing decade. I love the 1990s. It's my favourite decade. Time is an elusive and mysterious concept for most people. An invisible, indivisible dimension which, thanks to Albert Einstein, we now know is relative, not constant. Humans have a need to divide time into measurable chunks to try and make sense of it, work around it. Years arrange themselves conveniently into decades, and we give them arbitrary names. The roaring 20s, the hungry 30s, the swinging 60s, the noughties. There's no such adjective for the 90s. Of all our 10-year chunks, the 90s are the least classifiable. They were a transitional decade, or a stepping stone from a century of progress/carnage into a brave new future, from analogue to digital, from the grim British 80s to something fresh, something that had a bit of swagger, hope, and even optimism. All that was solid seemed to melt in the air. Sometimes you get lucky. Sometimes you're in the right place at the right time. Sometimes you get swept up in events so much bigger than your own inconsequential life that you step over a fuzzy line that separates historians from active participants. And that's the way the 90s felt to me. I was there, I got involved, and I got lucky. Mapping out the big stuff, the political, social, cultural, and technological shifts is the work of academics and professional historians. This project is more of a personal story. And like all good stories, it needs an arbitrary beginning. Bobby Gillespie, vocalist and frontman extraordinaire for Primal Scream, cheekily suggests the release of Screamadelica on the 23rd of September 1991 could be the starting point. Some say this is where the 90s began. He wrote in his autobiography, Tenement Kid. And yet there was something intangible in the air that month, something static, interference from afar perhaps, cultural smoke signals, a realignment of the stars. These things only became clear after the event. That's when the mythologies began. Intriguingly, Sam Richards, a BBC journalist, wrote an article online in 2017 asking, was September 1991 the greatest month ever for albums? The evidence was purely subjective, which is why I agree with him. I mean, we're talking about A Tribe Called Quest, Definitive Low-End Theory, St. Etienne's classic Foxbase Alpha, Orbital's debut album, Talk Talk's experimental final opus, Laughing Stock, so many genres, so many different musical directions. There was another big September 1991 release. It seems improbable that the day after Screamadelica hit the shops, Nirvana released Nevermind. These two landmark albums are often cited in the lists of the best albums of the 90s, sometimes among the best albums of all time. These were two age-defining, cultural shifting works. Even their sleeves have become two of the most iconic album covers ever. The childlike painting on Screamadelica, with the big eyes and primary colours, was supposedly inspired by designer Paul Cannell having an acid trip at the Creation Records studios. Nevermind is more conceptual in nature, with its famous baby in a swimming pool, chasing after a dollar bill on a fishing hook. Both covers convey aspects of childlike behaviour or curiosity with a hint towards more adult concerns, in sync perhaps with the decade that would follow. Screamadelica came out of nowhere and everywhere. It was a crystallisation of everything beautiful about acid house, rave culture, club hedonism, love on the dance floor, sex on sun-kissed beaches, blissed out, chilled out, all-night parties, chemical highs and floaty come-downs. Screamadelica encapsulated so many aspects of the existing cultures, but sounded like nothing before. It was and is a gorgeous, revolutionary work of art, expressing so many of Gillespie's left-field philosophies and the band's self-confident musical ideas. Godlike production, Mr. Weatherall, and the added vocals of the soulful Denise Johnston lift it, as track 4 tells us, higher than the sun. Nirvana's Nevermind was its evil twin. Conjoined at birth to Screamadelica, Kurt Cobain's internal demons screamed with twisted emotional lucidity. Nevermind spoke to the same generation as Primal Scream, but in a language of pain, self-doubt and violence. Nirvana, more polished than before, and their music alternated between quiet introspection and explosive anger. It was clear, even in 1991, that the 90s would defy simple classification like previous decades. This would be a decade where opposites would interact, where extremes would meet in the centre and simplistic explanations make little sense. Running through this book are the myriad tangential chicken and egg connections between culture and the bigger socio-political pictures. For it's in the music, film, poetry, storytelling, art and performance of the times that we find clues to what people were thinking and feeling. It's like, if you want to know what the First World War trenches felt like, it's to the poets we turn to first. The struggle for black emancipation is so often taken the form of song and music and has given us the richest possible heritage of gospel, soul, jazz, rock and roll, funk, ska, reggae and hip-hop. The 90s in the UK did not have a single cultural narrative. It wasn't all about Britpop, Brit art, Cool Britannia, New Labour or the death of Diana. That's the great metropolis of Londinium, talking to itself, creating its own mythologies. While all of these impacted on Scottish culture and feed into our narratives, we had our own actors, our own heroes and villains, our own choices to make. Blur and Oasis, or Trainspotting and Arab Strap, depends where you stand. I'll just leave it there, just a wee introduction. We're going to take a wee break here and then come back for what you're wanting to hear as well, Don Allison. So, go and have another beer, buy the books, all the rest. I'll see you in 5 minutes.
a big loud hello and welcome back to the third of the evening. Have you enjoyed your first and second thirds? Yes! So we're 2/3 groovy, like we're 2/3 water. You like water? You already like 2/3 of me. So that someone's bio on Twitter the other day, thought, I'm having that. Right, I did now. So we have been really looking to work with this final artist for quite a long time. We've been a really big fan of her music, of her collaborations, of who she is as an artist. Oh, we spill there, don't worry about it. We really just felt like she's enriched Edinburgh's cultural scene. Lots of our favourite artists, from Andrew Weatherall to Hannah Peel, she's worked with in unique and different ways. We were aware of the fact that she had this incredible new album coming out. We wanted an interesting and involved and vivacious way to be able to explore the album without it being a live gig environment. We thought our next series is in a gallery. This is going to be the moment for us to implore Dot Allison into the Reekie chamber. And we're really elated that we managed to do so. So we're going to be seeing we're going to be sort of dissolving the workings of Dot's brilliant mind behind this album tonight. We're going to be seeing lyric videos, hearing interview snippets, bits of spoken word. It really is the sort of majestic workings of an artist laid bare. And we couldn't be more elated to have her here. So if you could give a warm and rapturous round of applause to the incredible Dot Allison.
Thank you, Michael. That's such a lovely introduction, and thanks. It's lovely to be here. Thank you to Reekie for having me. So, yeah, I'm just going to read. I've not done anything public for quite a long time, and I was feeling really nervous, so I've literally got every word written down. So I'm going to read from paper. So, yeah, good evening. I'm Dot Allison, and I'm here to present an evening about my 6th studio album, Heart-Shaped Scars, which is out now on SA Recordings. Before I start, I'd like to say that I dedicated the album to the memory of Andrew Weatherall, who signed and championed and mentored me, and my musical career just wouldn't be, I don't know what it would be without him. And over the years, he is such a generous spirit, and he made me up countless compilations. And it's only now, I feel quite moved talking about it, but it's only now looking back over all my albums, I can actually hear those influences in all my work throughout, sort of, bit of massive influence. So I just wanted to say that. And the last time I saw him was at the Reekie night with Denise Johnson, who's also not with us anymore, which I can't believe. So anyway, I just wanted to say that. So tonight I'll be reading some spoken word around the album concepts and lyrics. I'll show some film pieces, including lyric videos, a music video from one of my singles, a couple of clips from interviews I did this year, ones with the Mercury Award nominee Hannah Peel and Fiona Cruikshank, who is a producer, or who co-produced the album with me, and a mixer, about our collaborations on the album, and also an interview clip with who's become a good friend through writing music together, Anton Newcombe from the Brian Jonestown Massacre, where he offered to interview me about the album, and as you'll see, he keeps me in line in the chat. So the first thing I was going to read was just a bit about the album context, ideas. So basically, I'm going to start reading a piece I had published in a bit of American press I did, and it's about 3 people that appear toward the end of my thank you list on this album, whose research and books have definitely formed part of the context within which I wrote the album. So I'll just find the sheet. It just says, if you look at the vinyl and the sleeve notes of Heart-Shaped Scars, at the end there's a list of thank yous, and there are 3 names. Edgar Mitchell, who is an astronaut on the Apollo 14, he was the 6th astronaut to walk on the moon. Rupert Sheldrake, who is an eminent biologist and a free-thinking heretic, and Stephen Howard-Booner, who's an independent scholar and polymath. And I wanted to write about how these three, in my humble opinion, enlightened individuals came to be on my thank you list. I was reading about the Woodstock Fruit Festival in about 2013, and I noticed that in a reading list by one of the speakers, an author had listed books and authors he was inspired by, including a book called Plant Intelligence in the Imaginal Realm. So I felt compelled to order the book upon reading the title. Oops. This book has affected me greatly, as it describes emergent patterns in nature, and it describes a quiet yet profound living intelligence in the natural world that only if we are silent and still enough for a moment can we truly begin to hear it. On the back cover of the book there is a photo of a flower or two, and the author asks us to turn to a certain page in order to find out the name of the flower. When you do this, it reveals to the reader that the flower in the picture is in fact a photograph of the sonar pattern of dolphin song. In this instant, it exhibited for me that individual and apparent separate entities in nature are in fact somehow entwined and exhibit almost a memory of each other in a way. And that really struck me and led me to search for other sort of echoes in various patterns in nature. So, for example, in my song on the album, Cue the Tears, I talk about, I have the image of a leaf skeleton, and in my mind I could easily be describing magnified human skin. For example, and I see a great beauty in that, and the reference to seeds and trees and germination being unable to take place without union or reunion. In the song Ghost Orchid, I describe a flower awaiting soil and a devastation in a way, like a calyx or a corolla coaxing a butterfly or a bee laden with pollen, for example. And I use this as imagery symbolising virginity, and perhaps the deepening of the flower to symbolise a kind of union. The song Entanglement is the apex moment in the heart of the record, and it's a haiku, a summit, a minute sonic emblem of the entangled world in which we live. It's specifically about quantum entanglement. And Rupert Sheldrake, in his books and lectures, discusses the return to a more panpsychist view of nature, of the nature of reality, where the entire universe is living, comprised of interconnected fields of resonance, which he calls morphic fields of resonance, and that the universe itself exhibits a form of consciousness, which again ties in with Stephen Howard-Booner's writings on the evidence of learned behaviours and memories, which can be recorded in plants. And more recently, I think it's Suzanne Sinnott, discovered what she calls the Wood Wide Web, which is like a mycorrhizal network that works within the roots underneath forests. And she did experiments and discovered that if you, feed a fir tree certain sort of compounds, what she noted was that basically they travel through the roots and are directed toward the sapling of the tree and only its own saplings. So she describes, her book is called The Mother Tree, and the roots of the mother tree even make way for its own saplings, which I find really beautiful as well. But and Edgar Mitchell, having had an epiphany and a profound sense of realisation that the universe was evidently interconnected and in his mind conscious while he was out in space looking back at the Earth at a distance whereby he could obscure it in its entirety with his thumbnail. He then dedicated the rest of his life to researching the true nature of reality and the science of consciousness. And having come across his studies and works and lectures, I felt profoundly affected. And I see my recurrent, I see my recurrent themes around love and attachment, nature and science throughout my music as a way of me exploring, describing the space between us, which it turns out may not be exactly a space at all. And so I believe that, say, in a song like Can You Hear Nature Sing, for example, and elsewhere throughout the album, I am writing from the soil bed of these ideas, and in my humble opinion, beautiful discoveries and explorations, and it is my way of listening to the voice within the silence of nature, and in the music expressing my part of that infinite fabric. So that's that. So the first piece of footage I'd like to, well, the first video clip is a music video directed by a really wonderful photographer, artist and video director, Maria Mochnaz, and it's from the third single from this album, and it's called One Love. Thanks.
And my petals close in your shade.
lovely you stay here. Thank you. Then the next thing I'm going to be reading are sets of lyrics from an album track called The Haunted from Heart Shoot Scars, which I co-wrote and duetted on with a really amazing folk singer, Amy Bowman. This poem uses the house as the metaphor for a body, the inner self, and even an unconsummated love. It's an ancient poem that I consider to be like a sister poem to an old song, Buzzing Round the Honeypots, which I'll also read as a prelude to The Haunted. So I'll read Buzzing Round the Honeypots first, which I feel kind of predates the other one, so conceptually. Okay, cool. Buzzing Round the Honeypots. A little birdie been telling me stories, whispering and whistling through the trees. It seems when you've not been with me, you've been pretty busy, buzzing round the honeypots like a busy little worker bee. No, it's true I could never leave you. Your love, it slayed me, brought me to my knees. But you've been pollinating other flowers, pretty little orchids right beneath my feet. I heard your rude wedding bells from the bottom of the well. I had no funeral I attended, for no, my murderous lover, you covered it up oh so well. One witching hour I will rise up from my oh so broken sleep. No, I just can't settle for that one amend. My love, that promise you made was meant to keep. I'll be yours for eternity. I think those were the words you said to me. So now I've come for your soul, you see, and hell is the only land where you will live without me. So follow me down now, for you trod me down. So come follow me down now. It's from the perspective of a ghost, obviously. Okay, this is The Haunted. Slip inside this haunted house, tiptoe silent, not a sound. Oh, I feel ghosts, ghosts all around me. Sun cuts through this dusty hall, spray can dreams across my walls, with blood-red berries right in snow. I sign to the dead who only know. Oh, I feel ghosts, I feel their breath upon my neck. I sense ghosts, ghosts all around me. Come like dust particles like stars, seal my heart inside your jar. Darling, cut me one more scar, before we fall to nowhere too far. Listen to what this corridor said, to the love songs weeping from our bed. Feel the beat of skipping clocks, hear the words this sweetheart talks. Oh, I feel ghosts, I feel their breath upon my neck. I sense ghosts, ghosts all around me. Let me lift that crown of thorns, all quitting was once sworn. I'll suit your cuts, I'll dry your eyes, with words that hover like a sky. So place your hand upon my mouth, whisper, shh, do you trust me now? You may burst through unbolted doors, spray can your love across my walls, haunt inside forevermore. Now feel my ghost, feel my ghost, feel my breath upon your nape, my ghost wrapped all around you. Feel my walls, be my ghost, be my guest, be my ghost. Thank you. The next piece of film I'm showing is a Zoom chat I had with Hannah Peel and Fiona Cruikshank about some of the making of Heart-Shaped Scars. This is an as yet unseen bit of footage where we chat about how we got together and a bit about the process. Hannah Peel is, as mentioned, she's Mercury nominated. She's a composer, producer, arranger. She arranged a very beautiful, she arranged a string quartet, some very wonderful Scottish players, and she also conducted the sessions for 4 songs and Heart-Shaped Scars. Fiona Cruikshank's a studio engineer mixer who works mainly in Air Studios in London. I asked Fee to co-produce this album with me as I wanted to share the producer role, and she is brilliant. We spent many phone calls and hours in the studio discussing the sonic image of the actual mix in terms of the sound and retaining the depth of field and looking for a sound that's naturalistic and full-bodied. Thank you.
And then I chatted to Paul Weller for like the first time in a long time. I think it was about August 2018. I reconnected with him. I think it was like, I don't know anyway. And then met up with him down at Black Barn, and he had recommended I contact you, Hannah, for space. And then I realised that because I was listening to I Love True Meanings, and it's like, maybe it would, I'm trying to think if that's the right chronology of it, but I'd listened to True Meanings and I absolutely loved the strings on that album, and just for me that's one of like my favourite albums of his, and just think it's so beautiful and sort of kind of elements of like Nick Drake and that, you know, that sort of beautiful kind of acoustic, more folky, more sort of stripped back vibe, and so then realised actually I already loved your string arrangements kind of thing when he recommended. So then I reached out to you via Yuffie, I think, and I came, and the reason I worked with you was because I was talking to Will Evans, a friend, through Spitfire, and he had said, "Oh my God, you've got to work with Reekie Cruikshank, she's amazing," you know. So you both just came very sort of highly recommended, and then I reached out to you both and sent voice notes. I think I played you a voice.
Yeah, we'd already been working together, but then I had coincidentally done, you know, a Weller string session with Hannah, and then when you were like, "Oh, I think we should use Hannah," it's like, brilliant, yes, you know, that sort of like connection of the circle or something, you know.
Totally, because Paul on the phone, and he was like, "You won't believe it," because I mentioned you to him, and he was like, "Oh, that's weird. I've just been working with him and Hannah, and be with Hannah, so it's just like synchrony,
absolutely, we'd already been sort of working on other songs, as you said. Then you were like, "Oh, I've got this really great stuff that I've, you know, just kind of almost found." We were in the right headspace to be doing something a bit different, I think, and then it was like, "Oh, maybe these are the ones that, you know, we could have strings and we could go off in this direction."
And totally. And then I sent them to you, did I email you the voice notes? Was that Oh no, it wasn't. It was after sound sessions.
They were like the rough mixes of just your voice and that's really beautiful and delicate. And actually, one of the first things I kind of said to you was, I guess one of the things I was like, what works really well with Weller is sometimes like he'll just send me a voice note of him singing over the track, and he'll be like, "This is the kind of melody," and I'll just be like, "Da da 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 da," whatever, and then I'll interpret that and take that to where I think it is. And I guess because I've worked with him quite a lot, that was quite an easy thing to do. So one of my first questions to you was, would you be up for doing that? Just so I got a sense of your melody lines and where you saw the strings sitting, like whether they were like more kind of in the background or whether they were played a bigger part of it. So that was really nice, because actually you sang over the whole of it on one of the tracks. I can't remember which one it was.
No, I think.
Yeah, and so I just took from that what I was kind of thinking. Okay, she's singing quite a lot over this. This is this. There's a beautiful melody here, and then I lifted up different things and then started to send that back to you both. But I don't think you'd recorded them to a click, had you? Because Fee, you had to make me all the click tracks.
Because we had a sort of meeting, didn't we, where, as you said, you were like, you know, how important are the strings going to be? And we were like, oh, you know, it's going to be strings and vocal and uke and maybe some piano. But you know, like this will be the song, and yeah, and so then I took Dot's kind of stripped back recordings and worked out the tempo maps and sent them all across to you so you had a fighting chance.
Thank you. It's hard to know if that's too long or not. Thanks. The next piece of film is a lyric video premiere by the video artist Johnny Saunders. This is a song called Constellations, about constellations of stars in the sky being viewed by two different people at the same, two people in different places at the same time. The piano notes are meant to signify stars in random constellations. Thank you.
Gazing up on all these stars.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that's Johnny Sanders did that video. He's really, really talented guy. Okay, the next the next clip is basically the musician Anton Newcomb interviewing me about the album. Anton had messaged me out of the blue over Twitter one day and asked me if I'd like to write something similar to a song I'd posted by a band called Opal. And he was like, if you ever want to write a song like that, I'm your man. So I said, yeah, actually I do. So we ended up writing a song, and then since then we've written a few songs, and then we ended up co-scoring a TV show together. So we're sort of like become kind of writing partners, which is really nice. But just around the album, he offered to interview me, and it's funny, I'm watching it, I do talk quite a lot, which at one point he just stops me. He's like, I wouldn't steal his thunder, tell him to shut up. So this is me and Anton Newcomb, thanks.
So, congratulations on your record.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's quite good.
Thank you.
I think it is.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for your support as well. You've been tweeting stuff, and yeah, really appreciate it.
Well, it's a pleasure. Because I wasn't exactly familiar with your whole body of work, but then we started working on stuff, and it's like, yeah, I really like this, But of course, I'm open-minded. I like lots of different things.
Same, yeah. I've got.
But
a good song. I don't care what genre it is. I just like a good. If I think
sure.
It moves me, it doesn't.
Sure. So, what was that like jumping back on the horse?
I kind of I've suddenly got an image of me trying to get off a horse, getting my foot caught in the stirrup and getting dragged along it really. Because I don't think you ever really get off actually. Because I always still had ideas, but it was really good making music again with a sort of focus and thinking actually this is going to be something. It's lovely. It's really nice to make something again. It's been good. It's been good and slightly nerve-wracking as well because I'm struggle a wee bit with shyness, which I think I've said to you before. But so I just like. But I think because it's so sort of incremental, little bits of press here and there, and it's been that. I'm sort of adjusting. So it's fine. It's fine.
Because I remember coming up, and what really drove me up until I started having recognition or accomplishments or any of these things, I used to want to tour outside of wherever I was living, but then just headlining this show, you have these steps that you're trying to get to, but putting a record out is one, and you have this driven desire, it starts with just the dream, right, and it goes on, and I was just curious about, your motivation. Was like, okay, this is, I don't want to say comeback, but I'm gonna do this, or was it like I'm gonna do this something new, or what was it kind of like?
It was more like, oh my god, I think I'm making music. It was more that way around, because I was up, because I've got friends in our Hebrides, and we got a little cottage there, and I was up there with my friend, and then we were having like a little Christmas party in this house, and my friend's son's in this really lovely trio, the Tom Campbell trio, and I said, did they want to play at this party? And then my friend Amy, I wrote The Haunted with, and she wrote Constellations as well, me and Sarah, played at the party. And I was like, oh my god, her voice is so stunning. And I just said to her, do you fancy doing something? And so it was just completely just coming across something where you think, oh, I'd just like to make a noise and music with you, so should we do it? And then I had this sort of pre-existing poem, which is The Haunted, and then 2 chords, and I was like, what, but I really like these 2 chords. Anyway, so she literally read this kind of poem off of my laptop, played these chords, and she just sort of sang a melody on the spot pretty much, And then I had a voice note of that on my phone, and I was like, oh, right, I think I'm sort of making music again now, because I just thought I want to do something with that, and so that's how that happened. It was more like, sort of come across it and then realise that I was so attached to what we'd done that I thought, right, I want to do more now, and that's how it started, I think. Yeah.
Anybody ever tell you could talk a mile, tell a block long story? Because I definitely want to cover a lot of things before I board you.
Okay, I'm going to try and be succinct.
Because I'm so curious, you know, because I know little tiny bits. I know what it's like working with you and talking with you. You know, then I hear something related to something, whether it's you talking about it in the past or if I stumble across something. And one of them is, you know, I think I've heard someplace that you played piano quite early, but you're also really intelligent. You know, you're interested in other things, right? Like even in school, right? So I'm just curious what got you into the music thing, and when was that? I mean, your own thing. Because there's one thing to take.
See, that's just us rambling on. Anyway, just wanted to show you a clip of that interview. The next video is Can You Hear Nature Sing? It's a lyric video. Thank you. That was actually a song. That was a song called Goodbye. And have you got a lyric video there? No, that's all we got. Okay, that's fine. Well, that's it. So thank you so much for having me tonight, and thank you to everyone for coming. Thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Dot. That was fantastic.
So, Dot has we were sort of lucky. It's hard to call it lucky. The vinyl merchandising for your latest album, Heart Shaped Scars, got delayed and delayed. There's all sorts of cockamamie going on with the vinyl industry, but it did arrive in time for tonight after a long process in incubation over in Europe somewhere. So we're really chuffed to have some of the vinyl through next door. You could get signed off Dot. I believe there's t-shirts there and other sort of merchandise and stuff. So stick around for a bit, enjoy the art, get some merchandise, have a bloody good night, and I want to say a big thank you to all of the 404 Ink Inklings. And of course, I want to say a big thank you to Kevin Harmon and all the team at Ltd Ink.
To DB and Kat.
And finally, to the incredible Dot Allison. Stick around, let's hang out. Thank you very much. You've been a great audience.